Brynn is a seamstress who still lives in her childhood home and mourns the loss of her mother. A past event seems to have turned the entire town against her, leading her to lead an anxious, lonely, and withdrawn life. She is seen writing a letter to her best friend, Maud, telling her she misses her and is sorry. To cope with her loneliness, she builds a model city in her living room and cooks gourmet meals. One night, she wakes up to discover an intruder in her home and quickly realizes the intruder is a humanoid alien. Brynn attempts to escape, but the intruder stalks her. When the alien uses telekinesis to subdue her, Brynn accidentally stabs it in the head with the broken shard of the bell tower from her model city school, causing it to free Brynn. Brynn discovers that all electronic devices have been rendered useless by the alien's intrusion. She abandons her car and the alien's body before riding her bicycle into town. On her way to the police station, she passes her neighbor's ransacked house and an overturned mail truck, and notices several small circles in the lawn that appear to be landing spots. At the station, Brynn unexpectedly runs into Maud's parents, who turn out to be the police chief and his wife. Maud's mother glares at Brynn with contempt, spits in her face, and leaves the station. Brynn decides to flee, but while riding a bus leaving the city, some of the passengers try to stop her, all manipulated by other aliens. However, she manages to escape. She comes across a deserted church where we see Maud's grave and learn that she died at the age of 12. He then sees a group of people who appear to be under the control of small, tentacled creatures visibly creeping under the skin of their throats. Brynn runs home and discovers that the dead alien also had one of the creatures in its throat, but it fled. She eventually decides to fortify the premises to keep the aliens at bay should they return. That night, a bright light pulls the alien's corpse from her home, and Brynn is forced to defend herself against two more creatures. The larger alien seems very curious about Brynn and regards her as if she were an anomaly. The scissors Brynn is holding as a weapon are easily removed from her hand with telekinesis, but she desperately clings to the photo of her and Maud as children. The creature is eventually able to wrest the painting from her hands, staring at Brynn and the photo in what appears to be confusion. After an intermittent struggle with a smaller alien, Brynn impales it through a closet with a broken mop handle and slams the door on its head. Brynn flees her home but is caught and dragged by an alien-controlled man into the beam of a flying saucer. However, just as she's about to board the ship, she kicks the man into the beam and flees. A third, much larger alien stalks and attacks Brynn, eventually climbing over her house to trap her. She pulls it into her truck, where its long limbs become trapped in the cab. One of its feet punctures the gas tank, which Brynn ignites. A saucer extinguishes the flames with a beam, but the creature is burned to death. After running back to her house, the same alien that interacted with her earlier goes to a room where Brynn sent letters to Maud and all of her pictures together. Again, it looks at them curiously. When Brynn tries to attack, she is telekinetically thrown through a wall where she is immobilized by a red beam. The alien levitates and regurgitates a tentacled creature, which forces its way into Brynn's mouth. Brynn immediately falls into an intense hallucination in which her house is undamaged and her best friend, Maud, is still alive, but she breaks free from her hallucination and rips the tentacled creature out of her mouth. The alien summons a flying saucer that levitates the tentacled creature and quickly grows a doppelganger of Brynn. Brynn's doppelganger chases the real Brynn through the woods, where she catches and stabs her, but she kills it with a box cutter and escapes to a deserted road. There, she encounters a huge alien before being sucked into a flying saucer. Inside, Brynn is psychically probed by a group of aliens, forcing her to recall the event that turned the entire town against her. During an argument in a field, Maud pushes Brynn to the ground, and she hits Maud on the head with a rock, killing her. The aliens converse with each other and return Brynn to Earth without one of the parasites controlling her thoughts and actions. Some time later, Brynn is living in her house intact. It's clear that all the other residents of her town are now under the aliens' control, and yet, in a marked change from Brynn's life before the invasion, the townspeople are quite kind to her. Comments. To pass the time, Brynn makes dresses, builds idyllic dioramas of Mill River, cooks, dances, and writes letters of regret to her deceased friend, Maud. When an alien invasion hits town, Brynn gives the alien explorer more than she bargained for and, like Maud, accidentally kills him. This leads to more aliens taking an interest in Brynn, until they later abduct her in one of their UFOs and discover her tragic memories. Recognizing her remorse and her personal struggle to forgive herself, the aliens free Brynn and give her the second chance her fellow Mill River residents refused to give her. In the end, she dances in the streets of Mill River with alien-possessed humans, some of whom once rejected her, while her own diorama has seemingly come to life. The world may be overrun by this gray alien species, but Brynn is now living the best life she can. Ultimately, the title of No One Will Save You speaks volumes about the goal of the whole exercise, in that Brynn had to save herself and, most importantly, forgive herself. She finally gets something she never thought she deserved, and I like the idea that this little girl who's been through so much has a really happy ending, as strange as that may be. I love horror movies that have a slap-in-the-face ending, but I liked Brynn too much to slap her. We had the idea that she went to a reformatory-type place. It was scripted, and honestly, we didn't end up filming it because of the weather, if I remember correctly. It was a combination of weather, outdoor days, and the question of whether it was too much for the audience to see all these flashes. It would have been part of that alien flashback. There was something so sad and lonely about a young woman who was barely a teenager and had her whole life figured out at that point, and so she felt like a very interesting character. She's alone at her mom's house now, but she didn't really have a teenage life. She truly loves what she loves. Caitlin, Dever. And I talked a lot about how Brynn is a 10-year-old's idea of what a 30-year-old is, and part of that is because her mom has a vintage aesthetic. Ramsey Avery, our production designer, was also a big part of this. So Brynn missed out on her teenage life and isn't going to get her Rumspringa, where she goes off and sows wild oats. She'll never have that experience and is too scared to even go shopping. So it was interesting to have a character who had healed a lot over the last 10 years. She had built this perfect little bubble for herself that was a little fake and a little idealized, but to her, it was the best thing she was ever going to be. She was just trying to make the most of that. Then an alien invades her house and, like her friend Maud, she accidentally kills her. This leads to more aliens arriving at her door, and we see the aliens taking a lot of interest in her childhood photos with Maud. That was something we talked about from the beginning. We really wanted the aliens, the gray ones in particular, to seem very intelligent but also very alien. In that initial alien encounter, they have their checklist of what to do around the house that night, and Brynn might be the 8th thing on the list. And things as simple as learning what a refrigerator is might be number 3. So their priorities would be different and skewed differently because they outnumber us. Also, if you have this hyper-intelligent species that's curious about us, then they won't just come and wipe the slate clean. There's a real curiosity about Brynn, and as they begin to discover things about her, they want to know what happens next in her story. This girl puts up such a fight, and if you saw an animal do something weird and strange, it would make you say something like, "I want to see the next YouTube video about that." So the aliens want to discover her that way, and hopefully the public will too. Brynn is eventually abducted in a UFO, and during a study, she is forced to relive her traumatic memories before finally forgiving herself. And then everything else that happens isn't necessarily what she would have expected or what the audience might have expected, but she's not Tom Cruise. There's never a world where she's launching nuclear weapons. And if anything, she and the aliens have a lot in common and can greatly benefit from each other. A lot of the ending came from the idea that Brynn has spent all this time creating her own world in a similar way to the aliens, and there's a bit of conversation between these aliens who are now running our bodies. I didn't want the aliens to be too empathetic, but I also think they understood that Brynn was a worthy adversary who doesn't have to be. In the end, she's dancing in the streets of this idyllic town she imagined through her diorama, and she'd rather be among humans possessed by aliens than those who used to be those humans. The aliens gave her a second chance like everyone else. I like the idea that this is a global thing, but there are a lot of people like Brynn. I don't know if she's the only one out of 7 billion people who's still themselves and doing fine, but I like the idea that she is, as far as she knows, that she is. She finally gets something she never thought she deserved, and I like the idea that this little girl who's been through so much has a truly happy ending, as strange as that may be. For me, the key theme is self-forgiveness. Brynn finally forgave herself instead of waiting for those magic words to come from other people. Only she could save her. Yes, the title is very specific and works in two different ways. But one of the fun things about not having much dialogue is that the title becomes dialogue in a way. Whether it's from the aliens to Brynn or from Brynn to herself, every character in the film can say that line, and it means something different each time. And well, all of this was the director's speech about the reason for his film. Although he doesn't know if Brynn is the only one who retains her humanity, I had a doubt, and I couldn't dispel it with his words about whether those spider-like things that enter humans to control them are part of the biological being of the Greys, or if the Greys themselves are being manipulated by another species. I tend to lean toward the latter, but what do you think? So, in conclusion, the goal of the film is forgiveness, and in that sense, no one can save you but yourself. On the other hand, it gives Brynn the opportunity to live in a macro model created by the Greys, where she was the main character, all to give her a second chance, the opportunity her neighbors had denied her. I'll leave you. I hope you liked it. Bye.